Hi and welcome. In this video I want to introduce you to something we touched on very briefly, and that is component lists. I'm going to go ahead and get into Setup Laboratory Analyses. Let's go ahead and open our analysis list. I've got a couple of analyses here, and one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this metals for soil samples. So let's double click on that and just open that up. Now in the components, I could have a lot more components. Let's add a few more. We'll add copper, silver, nickel. Okay, so there is our list of components. And what we can do is we can actually go over to the next tab, which is lists, and let's add a component list. Basically, it's a list of components, a subset of components. And we're going to call this first one, we'll call it all. And this all component list will actually contain all of them. The next component list we're going to create is precious. And that's precious metals. And I'm not even sure. We'll just pick a couple of those. And then, say toxic. Probably all toxic. Anyway, so there's 3 lists. So we'll click OK. So now let's go ahead and log a sample in. And we'll go ahead and use the component list functionality. So we're going to log in a sample, and we'll give the spec, we'll assign the spec just like we've done in the past. And we'll go ahead and add a test. We'll add the metals test. Now let's go over here to test data, and in the list, the component list column, we're going to pick all, and then I'm going to add a second test. Let's say metals, and then I'm going to do just the toxic. Click OK there. Now let's go ahead and enter some results. Let's go find our sample. I like to use login date of today to find things. And if we do right click and results entry, we should see our 2 tests. We see all of the metals here, and they fell under that component list all. And then we see the ones that I've put on the component list called toxic. Now if we right click here and insert column, and we insert the we don't see a component list column here at all. And that's because it actually doesn't assign a list to it, and we can actually remove this out of range. So all of these are unentered, and we'll notice some of them have specs on them, but I added a couple of them. Let's see, I think silver didn't have a spec, and nickel I think was a new one as well. But you'll notice that they all have status of all unentered. Let's go ahead and enter some results for some of them. We'll close it. So we see that this one's in progress. This test is available. It hasn't been started yet. If we do a completion on this sample, if we force the completion, one thing we'll notice is when we do go to those tests, let's go ahead and take a look at the status of the results. So I had entered 2 results, or no, that's not true. I entered 4 results. The rest got canceled because I completed early. And if we look at the other test, both of those are canceled. That's indicated by this icon, as well as if we right click and include the status of the result. Okay, so that's component lists. It's a real well, one thing I will mention is if you have a report, let's pretend I had a sample report. Actually, I do have a sample report. I'm going to right click on this sample and I'm going to look at my sample report here, tracking sample report. So if I look at the results that show up on that report, I will see some of them have been entered, some of them have been canceled, but there's a record for all of them. Let's go ahead and take a look at, let's log in a sample, and we won't use component lists. We'll just add the same test, but we're not going to use component lists. So I'm going to add metals for soil. And then I'm going to enter results, let's say for the first 2, cadmium and aluminum. The rest are empty, so there's 5 that are empty. If I run the report for that, the sample report, and this is true for any reports, you'll see that the records actually exist and they show up on the report, but only for 2 of them. The others, it's as though they aren't entered. If you ever have a customer who's asking, hey, I'd like to have the others show up, but just with a blank for the result, then what they may be looking for is for you to implement component lists. So let's do the same thing, but we're going to actually use the all component list, and we'll run the report, and you'll see what I mean when I say that you'll have little blanks on the report. So metals for soil, but in this case we're going to actually enter the component list all, and we'll enter only two results, just like we did on the last one. But really the thing to note is that they all have statuses now of unentered. And so if I save the 2 results, just like we did last time, but this time I run the report and I should see spaces for all of them. See, these are unentered and they don't have results on them. They do have a placeholder where the results are going to be, but they actually don't show up. So this may be, this comes up a lot with customers where they want a space to show up, but they actually don't have the results entered yet, and they want it to show up on a report. And so component lists are one way to do that. The other way to do it is to modify the report to where it's looking at the analysis component table or some sort of combined view where you get the little placeholders for each record. But that goes beyond the scope of this discussion. I think that the easiest, simplest thing to do is to have them implement in their master data the use of component lists. And we haven't gotten into test schedules yet, but once we do get into a test schedule, let's pretend I'll just quickly build a test schedule called soil. So this is going to be all the soil analyses, and we'll have 2 of them. We'll have the first one be pH, and the second one will be this metals for soil. Well, on test schedules, test schedule is a combination of multiple analyses in one object called a test schedule. We don't have any component lists for pH, so that drop down doesn't show up, but we do have for metals, and so you can consequently pick a component list to show up there. And once we get into test schedules, we can show how to use that. Maybe I'll do that in one of the next videos. But just real quick, you can log in a sample and have a test schedule assigned rather than just one test. You can assign a test schedule, basically a profile of tests, and those will get added. And it's just like adding the component list version of the metals and the pH. Of course, we don't have component list for pH, but we have the pH get logged, and then we have the all component lists. And you'll see that these all have statuses. That one does not. So you can see you can even combine the use of component lists and not component lists. So that's it for this video. Hopefully come up with something to keep going on our videos, and hope you enjoy component lists.